Joining me today is Peter Schwartz. Peter, thank you so much for coming. Can you explain what scenario planning is?
Sure. Look, scenario planning is a way of trying to anticipate where the future is going, not try to predict it, but look at several different possibilities, understand the forces that are creating the future, and then make better choices today by understanding, first of all, what are your risks, understanding what are the opportunities, and what are the consequences of the choices that you make. So it's a tool for exploring the future and making better choices today.
What is it about the times we're in now, the phase we're in that you call the crisis phase, and we'll get to the other phases in a minute, but the crisis phase that really throws scenario planning into relief?
Well, I've been doing this since 1972. I started my career at Stanford Research Institute in the early 70s. And this is the moment of greatest uncertainty I have ever experienced in the last half century.
Wow.
So it's a time where everyone, every individual, every small business, every big company like Procter and Gamble, everyone like Salesforce is facing enormous uncertainty. And so scenario planning gives us some tools to begin to give some structure and order to that uncertainty. So we're not just kind of groping in the dark or kidding ourselves that we know what's going on, but that we can give some structure to the possibilities and we actually are able to make better decisions.
I know, Peter, that you have been called upon in these times by a lot of important people in, critical leadership positions, governors, heads of state, of course, CEOs like Mark and CEOs who are clients of Salesforce. Are there consistencies in the advice that you give them in terms of how they manage through these turbulent times?
Well, in this case, yeah, it is, because we're all facing something very similar in the sense that right now we're in a crisis mode and everybody is basically focused on survival. And that's the right thing. How do we get through this? How do we get our employees, our customers, our shareholders, all of this, our communities through this time? So, that's where people are today. But what I'm also saying is, look, there's going to come a time before too long when you're going to see the beginning of turning the corner. And like I said to Gavin Newsom, for example, I said, at that point, the people of California are going to want to hear from you on what's the new California. What's your vision? What do we take with us into this new future that came out of the crisis? When the crisis started, we entered a new world. The future that was there before is gone. It's like the old phrase from Paul Valéry, the future isn't what it used to be.
Right.
So a very important thing for leaders is to help define that future. What is it you want to be? We're in a remarkably malleable situation. We have a lot of choices to make. We've learned a lot about how do we work, how do we shop, how do we learn, how do we provide health. I said to the governor, do you want to ask the people of California, did you like working at home? Did you like having your family at home? Did you like not having traffic? Did you like having clean air? And what do we want to take with us into that future? So I think there's a huge opportunity for leaders to actually articulate that vision coming out of the crisis and provide people a sense of hope for a kind of new future. The old one is gone.
What can we imagine is different after this crisis? And, are there some consistent answers to that question across industry?
It's a very interesting question. We will clearly reorient business travel. Tourism isn't going to come back very quickly. So there's a wide spectrum, I think, of things that we will see. Interesting question. Lots of people now are going to be a little wary of mass transit. Will we see a spike in auto sales as a result? People who maybe could only afford mass transit before now pay a bit more for a car. Means low-end cars will probably sell very well. So what we're going to see is a very wide range of things. Retail. Clearly, we're going to see massive change in how retail is done. Look, we're all now shopping from home. So what will bring people back to the store? Well, that will be about entertainment rather than about buying. Right? The experience of it. But of course, it can't be hanging out with a bunch of friends. It's got to be a new kind of experience. So there's going to be an enormous wave of innovation in retail that will get people experiencing products and services in new ways. So I see a very wide variation in how industries will play out.
Now, I want to get back to the three phases of this.
Sure.
You mentioned we discussed the crisis phase, which I think we're still in, and then you
Yes.
discussed with Gavin Newsom, what might be called, or I think you call a transition phase, and then a new world. Can you
Right.
tell us a little bit about those three phases and how they apply
Sure.
to the current crisis?
Well, an important question is how long and how deep is the crisis? And that's very much a function of two variables. What happens with the disease itself? Are there second waves? Does immunity actually hold? Do we get a vaccine? So there's uncertainty about how long the impact of the virus will be felt. And then secondly, the uncertainty with respect to the economic response. Does policy actually turn out to be effective in avoiding the worst economic consequences? So there's a fair amount of uncertainty about the time and depth. I'd say the least possible is call it the next 3 months and a kind of fairly deep recession. The worst is call it 18 months and a fairly deep depression. So there's a range in terms of how long the crisis will persist. The transition could begin as soon as 3 months from now and as late as 18 months from now. So that's an important uncertainty. And basically, there are several important signals. Do we actually have the disease really under control? And the best way is with a vaccine and treatments. So that's the clearest signal. And then the data that supports it is drastic fall in death rates, drastic fall in infection rates, et cetera. And then do we have kind of the right economic stimulus beginning to go that actually puts things in motion? Because what we've done so far is basically filling in the hole of lost economic activity. Now we need to get it cranked back up. So things like big infrastructure programs are ideal for that purpose. Lots and lots of jobs created. Frankly, the United States needs lots of infrastructure, repairing the old, building new, putting in clean energy, making every building efficient, putting fiber optic to every room in the country, and so on.
Mm.
So there's just lots of opportunity to do that sort of thing. And I think that is what will happen and will begin to happen in the transition phase, call it 3 to 18 months from now. Then the interesting question is, what is that new reality that we're living in? How much of what has happened here shapes the world to come, both at a local level and at a global level?
What advice would you have for leaders at P&G, brand leaders, regional leaders, and the C-suite, as they, try to step up and demonstrate both to their, teams and to their customers and to society that they're ready to take on the challenge of this current crisis?
The first is this is a remarkable opportunity to innovate how we interact, innovate how we reach our customers, innovate in our business models. We have to, and so it's a great opportunity. There's lots of tools for that innovation. The kind of tools we're using here are okay for interaction, but we're going to innovate lots of new ways of collaboration. This is going to be a
Yeah.
huge opportunity to pick up that mode. So innovate is the second. And third, and most important in many ways, is connect with your customers. The customers, look, you deal with retailers, and Procter & Gamble deals with retailers all over the world. In many cases, they deal in some cases with direct sales to customers. This is the moment to over-communicate with your customers, connect with them. They want to hear from you. Everybody is kind of in this fragmented world of disconnection. So that friendly voice, that person that has been on the other end of a call in your distribution system, that's who you want to reach out to. Make sure they understand that it's a real community and that we're all part of this together. That will pay off hugely after the crisis.
Yeah, very, very wise words from the very wise Peter Schwartz. Peter, thank you so much for joining us at Signal, and look forward to talking to you again.
My pleasure, John. Always great to get together with you.